One summer afternoon, Mrs. Edith Miles came home from a Tupperware party whose hostess had put perhaps too much cushion in the fondue, to find that she, Editha, had been named executor, or executrix, of the estate of Pierce, in Variety, a California real estate mogul who once lost $2 million in his spare time, but still he had assets numerous and tangled enough to make this job of sorting it all out more than honorary. Editha had stood in the living room, stared at by the greenish dead eye of the TV tube. God. Now, I don't even feel drunk. I think of the hotel room in Mazatlan whose door had just been slammed. Waking up 200 birds. Down in the lobby, a sunrise over the library slope at Cornell University that nobody out it had seen, because the slope faces west, a dry, disconsolate tune from the fourth movement of the Bardic Concerto for Orchestra. A whitewashed bust of Jay Gould that Pierce kept over the bed on a shelf so narrow for it. I'd always had the hovering fear it would someday topple on us. Was that how he'd died? You're so sick, Editha. It's Wendell Macho Maz. He is a disc jockey, working further along the peninsula, suffering regular crises of conscience. Hey. I got this letter from the law firm of Warp, Wistful, Cubits, Check and McNeilus, of Los Angeles, and signed by somebody named Metzger. It says Pierce and Variety had died back in the spring, and they'd only just now found the will. Metzger is to act as co-executor and special counsel in the event of any involved litigation. I have been named, also, to execute the will in a codicil dated a year ago.
Well, I'm off.
Well. I will try to think back to whether anything unusual had happened around then, through the rest of the afternoon. Through my trip to the market in downtown Kinneret, among the pines, to buy ricotta and listen to the music. Today I came through the bead-curtained entrance around Bar 4 of the Fort Wayne Seti Cento Ensembles Varium recording of the Vivaldi Kazoo Concerto Boyd Beaver soloist. Then, through the sun gathering of my marjoram and sweet basil from the herb garden, reading of book reviews and the latest Scientific American, into the layering of a lasagna, garlicking of the bread, tearing up of romaine leaves, eventually, of and on, into the mixing of the Twilight's whiskey, sours, against the arrival of my husband, Wendell, back from work. I wandered, shuffling back through a fat deck, full of days, which seemed, wouldn't I be first to admit it? More or less identical, or all pointing the same way, subtly, like a conjurer's deck, and the odd one, readily clear to a trained eye, in the middle of Huntley and Brinkley. I remember that last year, at 3 or so, one morning, there had come this long-distance call, from where, I will never know. Unless, now, he'd left a diary. Hello? Who are you?
Second Secretary at the Transylvanian Consulate, looking for an escaped bat.
Hello?
If you're in the sound of my voice this evening, I can heal you tonight. If you wanna be healed, put one hand on your radio, put one hand on what you want healed.
Hello?
Como que chinga sus maricón.
Hello?
Do you have relatives in Germany?
And finally his Lamont Cranston voice, the one he talking all the way down to Mazatlan. Hello?
But Margot, I've just come from commission at Weston, and that old man in the fun house was murdered by the same blowgun that killed Professor Quackenbush, or something.
Pierce, please, I thought we had, for God's sake. Mucho is rolling over and is looking at me.
I heard that. I think it's time Wendell Mars had a little visit from the shadow.
Silence, positive, and thorough, fell. So it was the last of his voices I ever heard. Lamont Cranston. That phone line could have pointed any direction, been any length. Its quiet ambiguity shifted over, in the months after the call, to what had been revived. Memories of his face, body, things he'd given me, things I had now and then pretended not to have heard him say. It took him over, and to the verge of being forgotten. The shadow waited a year before visiting. But now there was Metzger's letter. Had Pierce called last year then to tell me about this codicil? Or had he decided on it later, somehow because of my annoyance and your indifference? I feel exposed, finessed, put down. I have never executed a will in my life, don't know where to begin, and I don't know how to tell the law firm in LA that I don't know where to begin. Mucho, baby, let me tell you.
Today was another defeat at work. I don't believe in any of it, Ed. I try. I truly can't.
You're too sensitive. For a couple years you've been a used car salesman and so hyper-aware of what ethical ambiguity that profession features, that working hours were exquisite torture for you. You shaved your upper lip every morning, 3 times with, 3 times against a grain to remove any remotest breath of a mustache, new blades, true blood, invariably, but you kept at it.
I bought all natural shoulder suits, then went to a tailor to have the lapels made yet more abnormally narrow, on my hair, used only water, combing it like Jack Lemmon to throw them further off.
The sight of sawdust, even pencil shavings, makes you wince, and think of hushing, sick transmissions. So you diet, you still won't use honey to sweeten your coffee for like all things viscous it distresses you, recalling, too, poignantly.
Yeah, what is all too often mixed with motor oil to ooze, dishonest, into gaps between piston and cylinder wall. I walked out of a party one night because somebody used the word cream puff, it seemed maliciously, in my hearing. The man was a refugee, Hungarian, pastry cook talking shop, but there I was, your mucho, thin-skinned. Yet at least, I had believed in the cars. Maybe to excess, how could I not, seeing people poorer than me come in, Negro, Mexican, cracker, a parade 7 days a week, bringing the most god-awful of trade-ins. Motorized, metal extensions of themselves, of their families and what their whole lives must be like, out there so naked for anybody, a stranger like myself, to look at, frame cockeyed, rusty underneath, fender repainted in a shade just off enough to depress the value, if not myself. Inside smelling hopelessly of children, supermarket booze. 2, sometimes 3 generations of cigarette smokers, or only of dust, and when the cars were swept out I had to look at the actual residue of these lives, and there was no way of telling what things had been truly refused when so little, I supposed, came by that out of fear. Most of it had to be taken and kept, and what had simply, perhaps tragically, been lost.
Clip coupons promising savings of 5 or 10 cents. Trading stamps. Pink flyers advertising specials at the markets. Butts. Tooth-shy combs. Help wanted ads. Yellow pages torn from the phone book. Rags of old underwear. Or dresses that already were period costumes.
For wiping your own breath off the inside of a windshield, with so you could see whatever it was, a movie, a woman, or car you covered, a cop who might pull you over just for drill, all the bits and pieces coated, uniformly, like a salad of despair, in a gray dressing of ash, condensed exhaust, dust, body wastes. It made me sick to look, but I had to look. If it had been an outright junkyard, probably I could have stuck things out, made a career, the violence that had caused each wreck being infrequent enough, far enough away from me, to be miraculous, as each death, up till the moment of our own, is miraculous.
But the endless rituals of trading, week after week, never got as far as violence or blood, and so were too plausible, for the impressionable, mucho to take for long. Even if enough exposure to the unvarying gray sickness had somehow managed to immunize you, you could still never accept the way each owner, each shadow, found it, only to exchange a dented, malfunctioning version of himself for another, just as futureless, automotive projection of somebody else's life. As if it were the most natural thing. To you,
it was horrible. endless, convoluted incest.
I can understand how you could still get so upset even now. By the time you married me, you'd already been 2 years at the station, KCUF, and the lot, on a pallet, drawing arterial, was far behind you, like the Second World, or Korean Wars, were, for older husbands.
Maybe, God help you, I should have been in a war. Japs in trees, Krot in tiger tanks, gooks with trumpets, in the night. I might have forgotten sooner than whatever it was about the lot, that had stayed so alarmingly, with me for going on, 5 years. 5 years. You comfort them when they wake pouring sweat, or crying out in the language of bad dreams. Yes, you hold them, they calm down, one day they lose it.
I know that. But when are you going to forget? I suspect the disc jockey spot, which you got through your good buddy the KCUF advertising manager,
who'd visited the lot, once a week.
The lot, being a sponsor, was a way of letting the top 200, and even the news, copy that came jabbering out of the machine. All the fraudulent dream of teenage appetites, be a buffer, between me and that lot.
You believe too much in the lot, you believe not at all in the station. Yet to look at you now, in the tree-lit living room, gliding like a large bird in an updraft toward the sweating shaker full of booze, smiling, out of your fat, vortex, ring center, you'd think, all is flat, calm, gold, serene. Until you open your mouth.
Today Funch had me in, wanted to talk about my image, which he doesn't like.
Sponge being the program director.
And my great phone.
I know.
I'm too horny, now. What I should be is a young father, a big brother. These little chicks call in with requests, naked, lust, to your ears, throbs, in every word I say. So now I'm supposed to tape all the phone talk, and you are personally gonna edit out anything you consider offensive? Meaning all of my end of the conversation.
Yes. Censorship is a big part of being on the air. You know that.
Think.
Aren't you being out of line?
You and Funch go through some such routine maybe once a week. What about the letter from Metzger?
You and Pierce ended a year before we got married. You read the letter to me, and at the time, don't you remember how I withdrew along a shy string of eye blinks?
What am I going to do?
Oh, no, you got the wrong fella. Not me. I can't even make out our income tax right. Execute a will, there's nothing I can tell you, see Rose man.
Mucho? When did? It was over. Before he put my name on it.
Yeah. I meant only that, Ed. I'm not capable.
So next morning that's what you did, went and saw Rose me. After a half hour in front of her vanity mirror drawing and having to draw dark lines along her eyelids that each time went ragged or wavered violently before she could take the brush away. She'd been up most of the night, after another 3 a.m. phone call. Hello?
I didn't wake you up. Did I? You sound so frightened. How are the pills, not working?
I'm not taking them. It is Dr. Hilarious, my psychotherapist. But he sounds like Pierce doing a Gestapo officer.
You feel threatened by them?
I don't know what's inside them.
You don't believe that they're only tranquilizers.
Do I trust you?
We still need 104th for the bridge.
The bridge, Dabruki, being your pet name for the experiment that you are helping the community hospital run on effects of LSD-25, mescaline, psilocybin, and related drugs on a large sample of suburban housewives. The bridge inward.
When can you let us fit you into our schedule?
No, you have 500,000 others to choose from. It's 3 a.m.
We want you.
Hanging in the air over her bed she now beheld the well-known portrait of Uncle Sam, that appears in front of all our post offices, his eyes gleaming unhealthily, his sunken yellow cheeks most violently rouged, his finger pointing between her eyes. I want you. She had never asked Dr. Hilarious why, being afraid of all he might answer. I am having a hallucination now, I don't need drugs for that.
Don't describe it.
Well, Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Did I call you?
I thought so.
I had this feeling. Not telepathy. But rapport with a patient is a curious thing sometimes.
Not this time.
And then you couldn't get to sleep. But would be damned if you'd take the capsules I'd given you. Literally damned. You don't want to get hooked in any way, you told me that. So, I shrugged on me, you're not hooked? Leave then. You're cured.
I didn't leave. Not that you, a shrink, hold any dark power over me. But it is easier to stay. You know the day I will be cured?
Not me, I have always admitted that.
So pills are different? Hilarious only made a face at her, one he made before.
I am full of these delightful lapses from orthodoxy. My theory being that a face is symmetrical like a Rorschach blot, tells a story like a tat picture, excites a response like a suggested word, so why not? I once cured a case of hysterical blindness with his number 37, the Fu Manchu, many of my faces having like German symphonies both a number and nickname, which involves slanting the eyes up with the index fingers, enlarging the nostrils with the middle fingers, pulling the mouth wide with the pinkies and protruding the tongue.
This is truly alarming. As Uncle Sam faded, this Fu Manchu face that came dissolving into a place wouldn't stay with her for what was left of the hours before dawn. It put her in hardly any shape to see Rosamund. Edipa walked more or less by surprise to catch her trusted family lawyer stuffing with guilty haste a wad of different sized and colored papers into a desk drawer.
I had also spent a sleepless night, brooding over the Perry Mason television program the evening before, which my wife is fond of but, toward which I cherish a fierce ambivalence, wanting at once to be a successful trial lawyer like Perry Mason and, since this is impossible, to destroy Perry Mason by undermining him.
I know it is a rough draft of The Profession vs. Perry Mason, a not-so-hypothetical indictment.
This has been in progress, for as long as the TV show had been on the air.
You didn't used to look guilty, as I remember.
Ah, yes. It's you. From the group therapy sessions, and carpool with a photographer from Palo Alto who thought he was a volleyball.
That's a good sign, isn't it?
You might have been one of Perry Mason's spies, haha.
Haha. I have to execute a will.
Oh, go ahead then. Don't let me keep you.
No.
Why would you do a thing like that?
You mean die?
No, name you to execute.
He was unpredictable. Rosamund tried to play footsie with her under the table. She was wearing boots, and couldn't feel much of anything. So, insulated, she decided not to make any fuss. Coffee arrived.
Run away with me.
Where?
I will outline what you are in for. You must intimately learn the books in the business, go through probate, collect all debts, inventory the assets, get an appraisal of the estate, decide what to liquidate and what to hold on to, pay off claims, square away taxes, distribute legacies.
Hey, can't I get somebody to do it for me?
Me? Some of it, sure. But aren't you even interested?
In what?
In what you might find out. As things develop, you'll probably have all manner of revelations. Hardly about Pierce and Verarity, or yourself, but about what remained yet had somehow, before this, stayed away.
I feel a hanging sense of buffering, insulation, and the noticeable absence of an intensity, as if watching a movie, just perceptibly out of focus, that the projectionist refused to fix. And I had also gently conned myself into the curious, Rapunzel-like role of a pensive girl somehow, magically, prisoner among the pines and salt fogs of Kinneret, looking for somebody to say,
Hey, pull down your hair.
well, if it turned out to be you, I'll happily pull out the pins and curlers, and down it will tumble in its whispering, dainty avalanche, only when you get maybe halfway up, my lovely hair turns, through some sinister sorcery, into a great unanchored wig, and down everyone falls, on their ass.
But I'm dauntless. Perhaps using one of my many credit cards for a shim, I could slip the lock on your tower door and come up the conch-like stairs, which, had true guile come more naturally to me, I'd have done to begin with.
In Mexico, we somehow wandered into an exhibition of paintings by the beautiful Spanish exile Remedies Vero. In the central painting of a triptych, titled Bordando el Mando Terrestre, were a number of frail girls with heart-shaped faces, huge eyes, spun gold hair, prisoners in the top room of a circular tower, embroidering a kind of tapestry which spilled out the slit windows. And into a void, seeking hopelessly to fill the void, for all the other buildings and creatures. All the waves, ships and forests of the earth were contained in this tapestry, and the tapestry was the world. I, Edipa, perverse, had stood in front of the painting and cried. No one had noticed. I wore dark green bubble shades. For a moment I wondered if the seal around my sockets were tight enough to allow the tears simply to go on and fill up the entire lens space and never dry. I could carry the sadness of the moment with me that way forever, seeing the world refracted through those tears. Those specific tears, as if indices, as yet unfound, varied in important ways from cry to cry. I had looked down at my feet and known, then, because of a painting, that what I stood on had only been woven together, a couple thousand miles away, in my own tower, was only by accident known as Mexico, and so you, Pierce, had taken me away from nothing. There had been no escape. What did I so desire escape from? Such a captive maiden, having plenty of time to think, soon realizes that my tower, its height and architecture, are like my ego, only incidental, that what really keeps me where I am is magic, anonymous and malignant, visited on me from outside and for no reason at all. Having no apparatus except gut fear and female cunning to examine this formless magic, to understand how it works, how to measure its field strength, count its lines of force, I may fall back on superstition, or take up a useful hobby like embroidery, or go mad, or marry a disc jockey. If the tower is everywhere and the night of deliverance no proof against its magic, what else? What else? 2. She left Kinneret, then, with no idea she was moving toward anything new.
Bum ba bum ba da bum ba da da ba ba da da.
That's a new recording by Sick Dick and the Volkswagens, an English group I am fond of at this time but do not believe in.
I'm going down to San Narciso for a while to look into Pierce's books and records and confer with Metzger, the co-executor.
You rented an Impala?
Yeah.
I'm sad to see you go, but not desperate.
Hang up if Dr. Hilarious calls, and look after the oregano in the garden. It has contracted a strange mold. San Narciso lay further south, nearly like many named places in California. It is less an identifiable city than a grouping of concepts, census tracts, special purpose, bond-issue districts, shopping nuclei, all overlaid, with access roads to its own freeway. But it had been Pierce's domicile, and headquarters. The place he'd begun his land speculating in 10 years ago, and so put down the plinth course of capital on which everything afterward had been built, however rickety or grotesque, toward the sky, and that, I suppose, will set the spot apart, give it an aura. But if there is any vital difference between it and the rest of Southern California, it isn't visible on first glance. Here we are, San Narciso. Nothing is happening. When I looked down the slope, needing to squint for the sunlight, onto a vast sprawl of houses which had grown up all together, like a well-tended crop, from the dull brown earth. I think of the time I'd opened a transistor radio to replace a battery and seen my first printed circuit. The ordered swirl of houses and streets, from this high angle, springs at me now with the same unexpected, astonishing clarity as the circuit card had. I know even less about radios than about Southern Californians. They are both outward patterns, a hieroglyphic. I'm sensing a concealed meaning, of an intent to communicate. There seems no limit to what the printed circuit could tell me if I tried to find out. So, too, in my first minute of San Narciso, this revelation also trembles just past the threshold of my understanding. Smog hangs all around the horizon, the sun on the bright beige countryside is painful. Me and the Chevy seemed parked at the center of an odd, religious instant. as if on some other frequency, or out of the eye of some whirlwind rotating too slow for my heated skin even to feel the centrifugal coolness of words are being spoken. I suspected that Mucho, my husband, trying to believe in his job. Is it something like this he feels? Confused? Looking through the soundproof glass at one of his colleagues with a headset clamped on, and chewing the next record with movements, stylized as the handling of chrism, sensor, challenged might be for a holy man, yet really, tuned into the voices, the music, its message, surrounded by it, digging it, as are all the faithful, it goes out to. Does Mucho stand outside Studio A? Looking in, knowing that even if he could hear it he couldn't believe in it? Give it up. At least presently. As if a cloud has approached the sun or the smog has thickened, and so break this religious instant, whatever it might be. Start up and proceed at maybe 70 miles per hour along the singing blacktop, onto a highway that goes toward Los Angeles, and to a neighborhood that is a little more than the roads, skinny right of way, lying by auto lots, escrow services, drive-ins, small office buildings and factories whose address numbers are in the 70 and then 80,000s. I have never known numbers to run so high. It seems unnatural. To me, left appears a prolonged scatter of wide, pink buildings, surrounded by miles of fence topped with barbed wire and interrupted now and then by guard towers. Soon the entrance whizzes by, 2 60-foot missiles on either side and the name, Pyongyang lettered conservatively on each nose cone. This is San Narciso's big source of employment, the Galaxtronics division of Pyoyodyne Incorporated, one of the giants of the aerospace industry. Pierce, I happen to know, had owned a large block of shares, had been somehow involved in negotiating and understanding with the county tax assessor, Teller Yoyodyne here in the first place. Was part, he explained, of being a founding father. Barbed wire again gives way to the familiar parade of more beige, prefab, cinder block office machine distributors, sealant makers, bottled gas works, fastener factories, warehouses, and whatever. Sunday had sent them all into silence and paralysis, all but an occasional real estate office or truck stop. I'm pulling in at the next motel I see, however ugly, stillness and four walls having at some point becomes preferable to this illusion of speed, freedom, wind in my hair, unreeling landscape. It isn't. What the road really is, I fancy, is this hypodermic needle, inserted somewhere ahead, into the vein of a freeway, a vein nourishing the main line, LA, keeping it happy, coherent, protected from pain, or whatever passes, of the city, or pain. But were I some single melted crystal of urban force, LA, really, would be no less turned on for my absence. Still, now that I look at this next motel, I resolve over, I'm hesitating a second. A representation in painted sheet metal of a nymph holding a white blossom towered 30 feet into the air. The sign, lit up, despite the sun, says Echo Quartz. The face of the nymph is much like mine, which doesn't startle me so much as a concealed blower system that keeps the nymph's cause hidden in constant agitation, revealing enormous vermilion-tipped breasts and long pink thighs at each flap. She is smiling a lipstick and public smile, not quite a hooker's but nowhere near that of any nymph pining away with love either. Hot sun and the dead still air, is this an artificial windstorm overhead? Tossing gulls in 5-foot excursions? Slow whirlwind, words I can't hear. The room will be good enough for the time I have to stay.
Its door opens on a long courtyard and a swimming pool, whose surface is flat, brilliant with sunlight. At the far end stands a fountain with another nymph. Nothing moves. If people live behind the other doors, or watched through the windows, gagged each with its roaring air conditioner, I can't see them. Too fat to frog, that's what you tell me all the time, when you really try to put me down, but I'm hip, so close your big fat lip. Yeah, baby, I may be too fat to frog, but at least I ain't too slim to swim.
It's lovely. But why do you sing with an English accent when you don't talk that way?
It's this group I'm in, the Paranoids. We're new yet. Our manager says we should sing like that. We watch English movies a lot, for the accent.
My husband's a disc jockey. It's only a 1,000-watt station, but if you had anything like a tape I could give it to him to plug.
In return for what? Do you want what I think you want? This is the Payola kid here, you know.
No! Don't make me smack you with these rabbit ears.
Oh. You hate me too.
You're paranoid.
I have a smooth young body. I thought you older chicks went for that. Well, 4 bits for carrying the bags.
That night lawyer Metzger showed up. He turned out to be so good looking that I thought at first, somebody up there? Are putting me on? It had to be an actor. He stood at my door, behind him the oblong pool, shimmering silent in a mild diffusion of light from the nighttime sky.
Mrs. Mars.
Like a reproach. Your enormous eyes, lambent, extravagantly lashed, smile at me wickedly. I'm looking around you for reflectors, microphones, camera cabling, but there is only yourself and a debonair bottle of French Beaujolais, which you're claiming to have smuggled last year into California, you rollicking lawbreaker, past the frontier guards.
So hey, after scouring motels all day to find you, I can come in there, can't I?
I planned on nothing more involved this evening than watching Bonanza on the tube. She'd shifted into stretched denim slacks and a shaggy black sweater, and had her hair all the way down. She knew she looked pretty good. Come in, but I only have 1 glass.
I, the gallant Metzger, should let you know, can drink out of the bottle.
He came in and sat on the floor, in his suit. Opened the bottle, poured her a drink, began to talk. It presently came out that Oedipe hadn't been so far off, thinking it was an actor. Some 20-odd years ago, Metzger had been one of those child movie stars, performing under the name of Baby Igor.
My mother was really out to kosher me. Boy, like a piece of beef on the sink, she wanted me drained and white. Times I wonder if she succeeded. It scares me. You know what mothers like that turn their male children into.
You certainly don't look,
Looks don't mean a thing anymore. I live inside my looks, and I'm never sure. The possibility haunts me.
And how often has that line of approach worked for you, Baby Igor?
Do you know, Inverarity only mentioned you to me once.
Were you close?
No. I drew up his will. Don't you want to know what he said?
No. Oedipe snapped on the television set. Onto the screen bloomed the image of a child of indeterminate sex, its bare legs pressed awkward together, its shoulder-length curls mingling with the shorter hair of a St. Bernard, whose long tongue, as Oedipe watched, began to swipe at the child's rosy cheeks, making the child wrinkle up its nose appealingly and say, "Aw, Murray, come on, now, you're getting me all wet."
That's me, good God.
Which one?
That movie was called Cashiered.
About you and your mother?
About this kid and his father, who's drummed out of the British Army for cowardice, only he's covering up for a friend, see? And to redeem himself he and the kid follow the old regiment to Gallipoli, where the father somehow builds a midget submarine, and every week they slip through the Dardanelles into the Sea of Marmara and torpedo the Turkish merchantmen, the father, son, and St. Bernard. The dog sits on periscope watch, and barks if he sees anything.
Oedipe was pouring wine. You're kidding.
Listen, here's where I sing.
And sure enough, the child, and dog, and a merry old Greek fisherman who had appeared from nowhere with a zither, now all stood in front of phony Gaudikanese process footage of a seashore at sunset, and the kid saying Baby Igor's song.
Against the Hun and the Turk, never once do we shirk, my daddy, my doggy and me. Through the perilous years, like the 3 musketeers, we will stick just as close as can be. Soon our subs periscope will aim for Constantinople, as again we set hopeful to see. Once more onto the breach, for those boys on the beach, just my daddy, my doggy and me.
Then there was a musical bridge, featuring the fisherman and his instrument. Then the young Metzger took it from the top of his aging double, over Oedipe's protests, sing harmony. Either you made up the whole thing, or you bribed the engineer over at a local station to run this. It's all part of a plot, an elaborate seduction plot. Oh, Metzger.
You didn't sing along.
I didn't know until a loud commercial for Fungosa Lagoons, a new housing development west of here.
One of Inverarity's interests? It was to be laced by canals with private landings for power boats, a floating social hall in the middle of an artificial lake, at the bottom of which lay restored galleons, imported from the Bahamas, Atlantean fragments of columns and friezes from the Canaries, real human skeletons from Italy, giant clamshells from Indonesia. All for the entertainment of scuba enthusiasts.
Map of the place flashed onto the screen, and he drew a sharp breath, Metzger on the chance it might be for him to look over. But she'd only been reminded of her look down all this new time. Some immediacy was there again, some promise of hierophany, printed circuit, gently curving streets, private access to the water, Book of the Dead. Before she was ready for it, out came Cashiered. The little submarine, named the Justine, after the dead mother, was at the quay, singling up all lines. A small crowd was seeing it off, among them the old fisherman, and his daughter, Alegi, ringlet nymph too. Should there be a happy ending, would end up with Metzger, an English missionary nurse with a nice build on her, who'd end up with Metzger's father, and even a female sheepdog with eyes for Murray the St. Bernard.
Oh, yeah, this is where we have trouble in the Narrows. It's a bitch because of the cafe's minefields, but Jerry has also recently hung this net, this gigantic net, woven out of cable 2.5 inches thick. Mines. Daddy, blubbered the Metzger in the tube, I'm scared. The inside of the midget sub was chaotic, the dog galloping to and fro scattering saliva that mingled with the spray from a leak in the bulkhead, which the father was now plugging with his shirt. One thing we can do, announced the father, go to the bottom, try to get under the net.
Edith refilled her wine glass. They lay now, staring at the screen, flanks just lightly touching. There came from the TV set a terrific explosion.
Ridiculous, they'd built a gate in it, so German U-boats could get through to attack the British fleet. All RE-class subs simply used that gate.
How do you know that?
Wasn't I there?
But began Editha, then saw how they were suddenly out of wine.
Uh-huh.
From an inside coat pocket producing a bottle of tequila. No lemons? No salt?
A tourist thing. Didn't Verarity use lemons when you were there?
How did you know we were there? She watched him fill her glass, growing more anti-Metzger as the level rose.
He wrote it off that year as a business expense. I did his tax stuff.
A cash nexus? You and Perry Mason, two of a kind, it's all you know about, you shysters.
But our beauty lies in this extended capacity for convolution. A lawyer in a courtroom, in front of any jury, becomes an actor, right? Raymond Burr's an actor, impersonating a lawyer, who in front of a jury becomes an actor. Me, I'm a former actor who became a lawyer. They've done the pilot film of a TV series, in fact, based loosely on my career, starring my friend Manny DiPresso, a one-time lawyer who quit his firm to become an actor. Who in this pilot plays me, an actor become a lawyer reverting periodically to being an actor. The film is in an air-conditioned vault at one of the Hollywood studios. Light can't fatigue it, it can be repeated endlessly.
You're in trouble, Editha told him, staring at the tube, conscious of his thigh, worn through his suit and her slacks. Presently,
the Turks are out there with searchlights,
he said, pouring more tequila.
Patrol boats and machine guns. You want to bet on what happens?
Of course not, the movie's made. One of your endless repetitions.
But you still don't know? You haven't seen it.
And to the commercial break now roared the deafening ad for Beaconsfield cigarettes, whose attractiveness lay in their filter's use of bone charcoal, the very best kind. Bones of what?
And Verarity knew. He owned 51% of the filter process.
Tell me.
Someday. Right now it's your last chance to place your bet. Are they going to get out of it, or not?
She felt drunk. It occurred to her, for no reason, that the plucky trio might not get out after all. She had no way to tell how long the movie had to run, She looked at her watch, but it had stopped. This is absurd. Of course they all get out.
How do you know?
All those movies had happy endings.
All?
Most.
That cuts down the probability.
Then give me odds.
Odds would give it away.
So, I bet a bottle of something. Tequila? Alright. But you didn't make it. Feeling the words had been cut out of her.
That I didn't make it. Another bottle tonight would put you to sleep. No.
What do you want to bet? Then, she knew. Stubborn, they watched each other's eyes for what seemed 5 minutes. She heard commercials chasing one another into and out of the speaker of the TV. She grew more and more angry, perhaps juiced, perhaps only impatient for the movie to come back on. Fine then, it's a bet. Whatever you'd like. That you don't make it. That you all turn to Karen for the fish at the bottom of the Dardanelles, your daddy, your doggy, and you.
Fair enough.
Drawled Metzger, taking her hand as if to shake on the bet and kissing its palm instead, sending the dry end of his tongue to graze briefly among her face furrows, the changeless salt hatchings of her identity. She wondered then if this were really happening in the same way as, say, the first time in bed with Pierce, the dead man. But then the movie came back. The father was huddled in a shell hole on the steep cliffs of the Emsik beachhead, Turkish shrapnel flying all over the place. Neither Baby Ivor nor Murray the dog were in evidence. Now what the hell?
Golly, they must have got the real screwed up.
Is this before or after? She asked, reaching for the tequila bottle, a move that put her left breast in the region of Metzger's nose.
That would be telling.
Come on. Or the bet's off.
Nope.
At least tell me if that's his old regiment there.
Nope. Go ahead, ask questions. But for each answer, you'll have to take something off. We'll call it strip Botticelli.
Oedipa had a marvelous idea. Fine, but first they'll just slip into the bathroom for a second. Close your eyes, turn around, don't peek.
On the screen the River Clyde, a collier carrying 2,000 men, beached at Said El Bear. In an unearthly silence. This is it, men, a phony British accent was heard to whisper. Suddenly a host of Turkish rifles on shore opened up altogether, and the massacre began. I know this part, Metzger told her, his eyes squeezed shut, head away from the set.
Metzger rushed in to find me rolling around, trying to get back my feet, amid a great sticky miasm of fragrant lacquer.
For 50 yards out the sea was red with blood. They don't show that.
Oedipa skipped into the bathroom, which happened also to have a walk-in closet, quickly undressed and began putting on as much as she could of the clothing she'd brought with her, 6 pairs of panties in asari colors, girdle, 3 pairs of nylons, 3 brassiers, 2 pairs stretch slacks, 4 half slips, 1 black sheath, 2 summer dresses, half dozen Hawaiian skirts, 3 sweaters, 2 blouses, quilted wrapper, baby blue peon wire and old Ryan Mew Mew. Bracelets then, scatter pins, earrings, a pendant. It all seemed to take hours to put on, and she could hardly walk when she was finished. She made the mistake of looking at herself in the full-length mirror, saw a beach ball with feet.
Oh, for Pete's sake,
he said in his baby-eager voice. The can, hissing malignantly, bounced off the toilet and whizzed by Metzger's right ear, missing by maybe 1/4 of an inch. Metzger hit the deck and cowered with Oedipa as the can continued its high-speed caroming. From the other room came a slow, deep crescendo of naval bombardment, machine gun, howitzer and small arms fire, screams and chopped-off prayers of dying infantry. She looked up past his eyelids, into the staring ceiling light, her field of vision cut across by wild, flashing overflaps of the can, whose pressure seemed inexhaustible. I am scared but nowhere near sober. The can't close where it is going, I sense, or something fast enough. God or a digital machine might have computed in advance the complex web of its travel. But I am not fast enough, and know only that it might hit us at any moment, at whatever clip it was doing, 100 miles an hour. She moaned, and sank her teeth into his upper arm, through the shark skin. Everything smelled like hairspray. The can collided with the mirror and bounced away, leaving a silvery, articulated bloom of glass to hang a second before it all fell jingling into the sink. Zoomed over to the enclosed shower, where it crashed into and totally destroyed a panel of frosted glass. Then surround the 3 tile walls, up to the ceiling, past the light, over the 2 prostrate bodies, amid its own whoosh and the buzzing, the storied uproar from the TV set. She could imagine no end to it. Yet presently the cat did give up in mid-flight and fall to the floor, about a foot from Oedipa's nose. She lay watching it.
Blimey.
Coo. Oedipa took her teeth out of Metzger, looked around and saw in the doorway Miles, the kids with the bangs and mohair suit, now multiplied by 4. It seems to be the group he mentioned, the paranoids. I can't tell them apart. 3 of them are carrying electric guitars, they all have their mouths open. There also appear a number of girls' faces, gazing through armpits, and around ankles and knees.
That's kinky.
Are you from London?
Is that a London thing you're doing?
Hairspray hung like fog, glass twinkled all over the floor.
Lord love a duck.
Summarized a boy holding a passkey, and Oedipa decided this was Miles.
Different.
He began to narrate for their entertainment.
A surfer orgy I had been to the week before, involving a 5-gallon can of kidney suet, a small automobile with a sunroof, and a trained seal.
I'm sure this pales by comparison. She'd succeeded in rolling over. So why don't you all just, go outside and sing? None of this works without mood music. Serenade us.
Maybe later, you could join us in the pool?
Depends how hot it gets in here. The kids filed out, after plugging extension cords into all available outlets in the other room and leading them in a bundle out a window. Metzger helped her stagger to her feet.
Anyone for a strip, Barcelli?
In the other room the TV is blaring a commercial for a Turkish bath in downtown San Narciso, wherever downtown was, called Hogan's Seraglio.
And Verardi owned that too. Did you know that?
Sadist. Say it once more, I'll wrap the TV tube around your head.
You're really mad.
She wasn't. Really? What the hell didn't he own?
You tell me.
If she was going to, she got no chance. For outside, all in a shudder and deluge of thick guitar chords, the paranoids had broken into song. Their drummer had set up precariously on the diving board, the others were invisible. Metzger came up behind her with some idea of cupping his hands around her breasts, but couldn't immediately find them because of all the clothes. They stood at the window and heard the paranoid singing. Serenade.
As I lie and watch the moon on the lonely sea, watch it tug the lonely tide like a comforter over me, the still and faceless moon fills the beach tonight with only a ghost of day, all shadow grey and moonbeam white. And you lie alone tonight, as alone as I. Lonely girl in your lonely flat. Well, that's where it's at, so hush your lonely cry. How can I come to you? Put out the moon, send back the tide. The night has gone so grey, I lose the way, and it's dark inside. No, I must lie alone, till it comes for me, till it takes the sky, the sand, the moon, and the lonely sea. And the lonely sea. Etc. Fade out.
Now then.
First question.
From the TV set the St. Bernard was barking. Oedipa looked and saw baby Igor, disguised as a Turkish beggar lad, skulking with a dog around the set she took to be Constantinople. Another early reel.
I can't allow that question on the dorsal de paranoids, as we leave milk to propitiate the leprechaun, had said a fifth of Jack Daniels.
Aw boy. She poured a drink. Did baby Igor get to Constantinople in the good submarine Justine?
No.
I took off an earring. Did he get her in? What did you call them? In any glass submarine?
No.
I took off another earring. Did he get her overland? Maybe through Asia Minor?
Maybe.
I took off another earring.
Another earring?
If I answer that, will you take something off?
I'll do it without an answer.
Lord Metzger, shucking out of his coat. Oedipa refilled her glass. Metzger had another snort from the bottle. Oedipa then sat 5 minutes watching the tube, forgetting she was supposed to ask questions. Metzger took his trousers off, earnestly. The father seemed to be up before a court-martial, now.
So, an early reel. This is where he gets cashiered. Ha ha. Maybe it's a flashback, or maybe he gets it twice.
I removed the bracelet. So went the succession of film fragments on the tube, the progressive removal of clothing that seemed to bring her no nearer nudity, the boozing, the tireless shibari, the voices and guitars from out by the pool. Now and then a commercial would come in, each time Metzger would say,
Inveratus.
or big block of shares, and later settled for nodding and smiling. Edica would scowl back, growing more and more certain, while a headache began to flower behind her eyes, that they among all possible combinations of new lovers had found a way to make time itself slow down. Things grew less and less clear. At some point she went into the bathroom, tried to find her image in the mirror and couldn't. She had a moment of nearly pure terror, then remembered that the mirror had broken and fallen in sink. 7 years bad luck, she said aloud. I will be 35. She shut the door behind her and took the occasion to blunder, almost absently, into another slip and skirt, as well as a long leg girdle and a couple pairs of knee socks. It struck her that if the sun ever came up, Metzger would disappear. She wasn't sure if she wanted him to. I came back in to find Metzger wearing only a pair of boxer shorts and fast asleep with a heart in his head under the couch. I've noticed also a fat stomach the suit had hidden. On the screen, New Zealanders and Turks were impaling one another on bayonets.
With a cry, Edica rushed to him, fell on him, began kissing him to wake him up. His radiant eyes flew open, pierced her, as if she could feel the sharpness somewhere vague between her breasts. She sank with an enormous sigh that carried all the rigidity like a mythical fluid from her, down next to him. So weak she couldn't help him undress her.
It took him 20 minutes, rolling, arranging her this way and that, as if she thought he were some scaled-up, short-haired, poker-faced little girl with a Barbie doll. She may have fallen asleep once or twice. She awoke at last to find herself getting laid. She'd come in on a sexual crescendo in progress, like a cut to a scene where the camera is already moving. Outside a fugue of guitars had begun, and she counted each electronic voice as it came in, till she reached 6 or so and recalled only 3 of the paranoids played guitars. So others must be plugging in. Which indeed they were. Her climax in Metzger's, when it came, coincided with every light in the place, including the TV tube, suddenly going out, dead, black. It was a curious experience. The paranoids had blown a fuse. When the lights came on again, and she and Metzger might find him in a wall-to-wall scatter of clothing and spill up the TV tube revealed the father, dog and baby Igor trapped inside the darkening Justine, as the water level inexorably rose.
The dog was first to drown, in a great crowd of bubbles. The camera came in for a close-up of baby Igor crying, one hand on the control board. Something short-circuited then and the grounded baby Igor was electrocuted, thrashing back and forth and screaming horribly.
Through one of those Hollywood distortions in probability, the father was spared electrocution so he could make a farewell speech, apologizing to baby Igor and the dog for getting them into this and regretting that they wouldn't be meeting in heaven. Your little eyes have seen your daddy for the last time. You are for salvation. I'm for the pit. At the end, the suffering eyes filled the screen. The sound of incoming water grew deafening. Upswelled that strange 30s movie music with the massive sax section, and faded the legend the end. Edica had leaped to her feet and run across to the other wall to turn and glare at Metzger. They didn't make it. You bastard, I won.
You won me?
What did Inverarity tell you about me?
That you wouldn't be easy?
She started to cry.
Come back, come on.
After a while she said, I will. And she did. 3. Things then did not delay in turning curious. If one object behind her discovery of what she was to label the Tristero system, or often only the Tristero, as if it might be something secret title, were to bring to an end her encapsulation in her tower, then that night's infidelity with Metzger would logically be the starting point for it. Logically. That's the way you come to hug her most, perhaps. The way it fitted, logically, together. As I guessed that first minute in San Narciso, there were revelation in progress all around me. Much of the revelation will be to come through the same collection Pierce had left, his substitute often for me, thousands of little colored windows into deep vistas of space and time, savannas teeming with elands and gazelles, galleons sailing west into the void, Hitler heads, sunsets, cedars of Lebanon, allegorical faces that never were. He could spend hours peering into each one, ignoring me. I have never seen the fascination. The thought that now it'll all have to be inventoried and appraised was only another headache. No suspicion at all that it might have something to tell me. Yet if I hadn't been set up or sensitized, first by my peculiar seduction, then by the other, almost offhand things, what after all could the mute stamps have told me, remaining then as they would have only, ex-rivals, cheered as at my death, about to be broken up into lots, en route to any number of new masters? It got seriously underway, this sensitizing, either with the letter from Macho or the evening we drifted into a strange bar known as the Scope. Looking back, I forget which had come first. The letter itself had nothing much to say, had come in response to one of my dutiful, more or less rambling, twice-a-week notes to him, in which I was not confessing to my scene with you because if Macho would somehow, no, he
would then proceed at a KCUF record hop to look out again across the gleaming gym floor, and there in one of the giant keyholes inscribed for basketball C, groping her vertical backstroke a little awkward opposite any boy heels might make her an inch taller than
a Sharon, Linda or Michelle, 17 and what is known as a hip one, whose velvet eyes ultimately, statistically would meet Macho's and respond, and the thing would develop then groovy as it could when you found you couldn't get statutory rape really out of the back of your law-abiding head. I know the pattern because it had happened a few times already, though I have been most scrupulously fair about it, mentioning the practice only once. In fact, another 3 in the morning and out of a dark dawn sky, asking if he wasn't worried about the penal code.
Of course.
That was all. But in his tone of voice I thought I heard more, something between annoyance and agony. I wondered then if worrying affected his performance. Having once been 17 and ready to laugh at almost anything, I found myself then overcome by, call it a tenderness I'd never go quite to the back of Les Nugget Bond. It kept me from asking him any more questions. Like all our inabilities to communicate, this too had a virtuous motive.
It may have been an intuition that the letter would be newsless inside that made you look more closely at its outside, when it arrived. At first you didn't see.
It was an ordinary Macho-esque envelope, swiped from the station, ordinary airmail stamp, to the left of the cancellation a blurb put on by the government. Report all obscene mail to your pot's master. Idly, I began to skim back through Macho's letter after reading it to see if there were any dirty words. Metzger. What is the pot's master?
Guy in the scullery, in charge of all the heavy stuff, canner kettles, gunboats, Dutch ovens.
I threw a brazier in at you and said, I'm supposed to report all obscene mail to my pot's master.
So they make misprints, let them. As long as they're careful about not pressing the wrong button, you know?
It may have been that same evening that we happened across the Scope, a bar out on the way to LA, near the Yo-Yo Dang plant. Every now and again, like this evening, echo quartz becomes impossible, either because of the stillness of the pool and the blank windows that face on it,
or prevalence of teenage voyeurs, who'd all had copies of Miles's Passkey made, so they could check in at whim on any bizarre sexual action.
It would go so bad we got in the habit of dragging a mattress into the walk-in closet, where we moved the chest of drawers up against the door, removed the bottom drawer and put it on top, to insert your legs in the empty space, this being the only way you could lie full length in that closet, by which point you'd usually lost interest in the whole thing. The Scope proves to be a haunt for electronics assembly people from Yo-Yo Dang. The green neon sign outside ingeniously depicted the face of an oscilloscope tube, over which flows an ever-changing dance of visagist figures.
Today seems to be payday, and everyone inside is drunk already.
Cleared it all the way, we found this table and back.
A wizened bartender wearing shades materializes, and I order bourbon.
Checking the bar, I grew nervous. There was this je ne sais quoi about the Scope crowd. They all wear glasses and stare at you, silent.
Except for a couple 3 near the door, who are engaged in a nose-picking contest, seeing how far they could flick it across the room.
A sudden chorus of whoops and yells burst from a kind of jukebox at the far end of the room. Everybody quit talking. The bartender tiptoed back, with the drinks. What's happening?
That's by Stockhausen. The early crowd tends to dig your Radio Cologne sound. Later on we really swing. We're the only bar in the area, you know, has a strict electronic music policy. Come on around the 2 days, starting midnight with a your sine wave session. That's our live get together. Fellas come and used to jam from all over the state. San Jose, Santa Barbara, San Diego.
Life? Electronic music? Life?
They put it on the tape, here, live. Fella. We got a whole back room full of your audio oscillators, gunshot machines, contact meters, everything man. That's for if you did apostrophe bring your axe, see, but you got the feeling and you want to swing with the rest of the kids, there's always something available.
No offense.
A frail young man in a draped bicycle slid into the seat across from us, introduces himself as
Mike Fallopian. I proselytize for an organization known as the Peter Pingwid Society.
You one of these right-wing nut outfits?
They accuse us of being paranoids. Us. The Peter Pingwid Society was named for the commanding officer of the Confederate man of war Disgruntled, who early in 1863 had set sail with the daring plan of bringing a task force around Cape Horn to attack San Francisco and thus open a second front in the war for Southern independence. Storms and scurvy managed to destroy or discourage every vessel in this armada except the game Little Disgruntled, which showed up off the coast of California about a year later. Unknown, however, to Commodore Pingwid, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia had dispatched his Far East fleet, 4 corvettes and 2 clippers, all under the command of one Rear Admiral Popov, to San Francisco Bay, as part of a ploy to keep Britain and France from, among other things, intervening on the side of the Confederacy. Pingwid could not have chosen a worse time for an assault on San Francisco. Rumors were abroad that winter that Marine cruisers Alabama and Sumter were indeed on the point of attacking the city, and the Russian admiral had, on his own responsibility, issued his Pacific Squadron standing orders to put on steam and clear for action should any such attempt develop. The cruisers, however, seemed to prefer cruising and nothing more. This did not keep Popov from periodic reconnoitering. What happened on the 9th of March, 1864, a day now held sacred by all Peter Pingwid Society members, is not too clear. Popov did send out a ship, either the corvette Vilgatire or the clipper Guider Mac, to see what it could see. Off the coast of either what is now Carmel by the sea, or what is now Pismo Beach, around noon or possibly toward dusk, the 2 ships sighted each other. One of them may have fired, if it did then the other responded, but both were out of range so neither showed a scar afterward to prove anything. Night fell. In the morning the Russian ship was gone. But motion is relative. If you believe an excerpt from the Vilgatire or Guider Make's log, forwarded in April to the General Adjutant in St. Petersburg and now somewhere in the Krasny Archive, it was the Disgruntled that had vanished during the night.
Who cares?
We don't try to make scripture out of it. Naturally, that's cost us a lot of support in the Bible Belt, where we might have been expected to go over real good. The old Confederacy. But that was the very first military confrontation between Russia and America. Attack, retaliation, both projectiles deep-sixed forever and the Pacific rolls on. But the ripples from those 2 splashes spread, and grew, and today engulf us all. Peter Pingwid was really our first casualty, not the fanatic our more left-leaning friends over in the Birch Society chose to martyrize.
Was the Commodore killed, then?
Much worse. After the confrontation, appalled at what had to be some military alliance between abolitionist Russia, Nicholas having freed the serfs in 1861, and a union that paid lip service to abolition, while it kept its own industrial laborers in a kind of wage slavery, Peter Pingwood stayed in his cabin for weeks, brooding.
But that sounds like he was against industrial capitalism. Wouldn't that disqualify him as any kind of anti-communist figure?
You think like a butcher, good guys and bad guys. You never get to any of the underlying truth. Sure, he was against industrial capitalism. So are we. Didn't it lead, inevitably, to Marxism?
Underneath, both are part of the same creeping horror. Industrial anything.
There you go.
What happened to Peter Pingwood?
He finally resigned his commission. Violated his upbringing and code of honor. Lincoln and the Tsar had forced him to. That's what I meant when I said casualty. He and most of the crew settled near LA, and for the rest of his life he did little more than acquire wealth.
How poignant. What doing?
Speculating in California real estate. Well, during the drought that year you could have bought lots in the heart of downtown LA for 63 cents a piece.
Mail call.
Sure enough, it is, just like in the army. The fat kid, looking harassed, is climbing up on the bar and starting to call names and to throw envelopes into the crowd. I must excuse myself and joined the others.
I have to take out a pair of glasses and squint through them at the kid on the bar. He's wearing a yo-yo dang bench. What do you make of that?
Some inter-office mail run.
This time of night?
Maybe a late shift. We back, heading for the ladies' room. On the latrine wall, on my lipstick obscenities, I noticed the following message, neatly indicted in engineering lettering. Interested in sophisticated fun? You, hubby, girlfriends. The more the merrier. Get in touch with Kirby, 3 ways only, box 7391, LA. Waste? Beneath the notice, faintly in pencil, is a symbol I'd never seen before, a loop, triangle and trapezoid. Thus, it might be something sexual, but I somehow doubt it. I find the pen in my purse and copy the address and symbol in my memo book, thinking, God, hieroglyphics.
You weren't supposed to see that. I received an envelope. As you can see, instead of a postage stamp, the hand-struck initials PPS.
Of course, delivering the mail is a government monopoly. You would be opposed to that.
It's not as rebellious as it looks. We use the iodines and turbo-fast delivery. On the sly. But it's hard to find carriers. We have a big turnover. They run on a tight schedule, and they get nervous. Security people over at the plant know something's up. They keep a sharp eye out. DeWitt, the fat male man.
I'm being hauled, twitching, down off the bar and offered drinks I do not want.
He's the most nervous one we've had all year.
How extensive is this?
Only inside our San Narciso chapter. They've set up pilot projects similar to this in the Washington and I think Dallas chapters. But we're the only one in California so far. A few of your more affluent type members do wrap their letters around bricks, and then the whole thing in brown paper, and send them Railway Express. But I don't know.
Oh, like copying out?
It's the principle, to keep it up to some kind of a reasonable volume. Each member has to send at least 1 letter a week through the iodine system. If you don't, you get fined. That's how it is, most of the time. Dear Mike, it says, how are you? Just thought I'd drop you a note. How's your book coming? Guess that's all for now. See you at the scope.
What book did they mean?
Turns out I'm doing a history of private mail delivery in the US, a attempting to link the Civil War to the postal reform movement that had begun around 1845. I find it beyond simple coincidence that in all years 1861 the federal government should have set out on a vigorous suppression of those independent mail routes still surviving the various acts of 45, 47, 51 and 55, acts all designed to drive any private competition into financial ruin.
I see it all as a parable of power, its feeding, growth and systematic abuse, though he didn't go into it that far with me, that particular night. All I would remember about him at first, in fact, were his slender build and neat Armenian nose, and a certain affinity of his eyes for a green neon. So begins, for me, the languid, sinister blooming of the Tristero. Or rather, my attendance at some unique performance, prolonged as if it were the last of the night, something a little extra for whoever'd stay this late. As if the breakaway gowns, net bras, jeweled garters and G-strings of historical figuration that would fall away will wear inside my own street clothes and that game with you in front of the Baby Eager movie. As if a plunge toward an indefinite black hours long would indeed be necessary before the Tristero could be revealed in its terrible nakedness. Would it smile, then, be coy? And would it flirt away harmlessly backstage, say goodnight with a Bourbon Street bow and leave me in peace? Or did it instead, the dance ended, come back down the runway, its luminous stare locked to mine, smile gone malign and pitiless, bent to me alone among the desolate rows of seats, and begin to speak words I never wanted to hear? The beginning of that performance was clear enough. It was while Metzger and I were waiting for ancillary letters to be granted representatives in Arizona, Texas, New York and Florida, where Variety had developed real estate, and in Delaware, where he'd been incorporated. The two of us, followed by a convertible full of the paranoid smiles, Dean, Serge and Leonard and their chicks, had decided to spend the day out at Fontosa Lagoons, one of Variety's last big projects. The trip out was uneventful except for 2 or 3 collisions the paranoids almost had owing to Serge, the driver, not being able to see through his hair. He was persuaded to hand over the wheel to one of the girls. Somewhere beyond the battening, urged sweep of 3-bedroom houses rushing by their thousands across all the dark beige hills, somehow implicit in an arrogance or bite to the smog the morning when sunrise of San Narciso in black lurked the sea, the unimaginable Pacific, the one to which all surfers, beach pads, sewage disposal schemes, tourist incursions, sun homosexuality, chartered fishing are irrelevant, the whole left by the moon's tearing free in monument or exile. You could not hear or even smell this, but it was there. Something tidal began to reach feelers and past eyes and eardrums, perhaps to rouse fractions of brain current your most gossamer microelectrodes yet too gross for finding. I believed, long before leaving Kinneret, in some principle of the sea's redemption for Southern California, not, of course, for her own section of the state, which seemed to need none. Someone voiced the idea that no matter what you did to its edges, the true Pacific state and violent and integrated or assumed yet lean us at any edge into some more general truth. Perhaps it was only that notion, its arid hope, she sensed as this foreign unity their seaward thrust, which would stop short of any sea. They came in among her moving machines, a total absence of trees, the usual hieratic geometry, and eventually, shimmying for the sand roads, down in a helix to a sculptured body of water named Lake Variety. Out in it, on a round island of film Mount Blue Avellets, squatted the social hall, a chunky, a given vertigrized, Art Nouveau reconstruction of some European pleasure casino. I fell in love with it. The paranoid element piled out of their car, carrying musical instruments and looking around as if for outlets under the truck and white sand to plug into. Edipa from the Impala's trunk took a basket filled with cold eggplant parmesan sandwiches from an Italian drive-in, and Metzger came up with an enormous thermos of tequila sours. They wandered all in a loose pattern down the beach toward a small marina for what boat owners didn't have lots directly on the water.
Hey, blokes, let's pinch a boat.
Here, here, here.
Here. Metzger closed his eyes and tripped over an old anchor.
Larceny, maybe they'll need a lawyer.
A A snarl rose along with some smoke from among pleasure boats strung like piglets along the pier, indicating the paranoids had indeed started someone's outboard. "Come on, then," they called. Suddenly, a dozen boats away, a form, covered with a blue polyethylene tarp, rose up and said,
"Come on then."
Baby Igor, I need help.
I know that voice.
Quick, let me hitch a ride with you guys.
Hurry.
Manny Di Presso.
Your actor/lawyer friend.
Not so loud. Hey, they're watching. With binoculars.
Metzger handed Edgar aboard the about to be hijacked vessel, alive with aluminum trimmer known as the Godzilla 2, and gave Di Presso what he intended to be a hand also, but he had grabbed, it seemed, only empty plastic, and when he pulled, the entire covering came away and there stood Di Presso, in a skin diving suit and wraparound shades.
I can explain.
Hey! Hey!
Yelled a couple voices, faintly, almost in unison, from up the beach a ways. A squat man with a crew cut, intensely tanned and also with shades, came out in the open running, one arm doubled like a wing with a hand at chest level, inside the jacket.
Are we on camera?
This is real. Come on.
The paranoids cast off, backed their Godzilla H out from the pier, turned and with a concerted whoop took off like a bat out of hell, nearly sending Di Presso over the fantail. Edipa, looking back, could see their pursuer had been joined by another man about the same build. Both wore gray suits. She couldn't see if they were holding anything like guns.
I left my car on the other side of the lake, but I know he is somebody watching.
Who does?
Anthony Giangaris, alias Tony Jaguar.
Who?
Spasm.
The paranoids were singing, to the tune of Addis Fidel's.
Hey, solid citizen, we just pinched your boat. Hey, solid citizen, we just pinched your boat.
Rubassing around, trying to push each other over the side. Edipa cringed out of the way and watched Di Presso. If he had really played the part of Metzger in a TV pilot film as Metzger claimed, the casting had been typically Hollywood. They didn't look or act a bit alike.
So, who's Tony Jaguar? Very big in Cosa Nostra, is who?
You're an actor. How are you in with them?
I'm a lawyer again. That pilot will never be bought. Metz, not unless you go out and do something really Darrow-like, spectacular. Arouse public interest, maybe with a sensational defense.
Like what?
Like when the litigation I'm bringing against the estate of Pearson Variety.
Metzger, as much as cool Metzger could, goggled. Di Presso laughed and punched Metzger in the shoulder.
That's right, good buddy.
Who wants what? You better talk to the other executor too.
He introduced Edipa, Di Presso tipping his shades politely. The air suddenly went cold, the sun was blotted out. The three looked up in alarm, to see looming over them and about to collide the pale green social hall, its towering pointed windows, wrought iron floral embellishments, solid silence, air somehow waiting for them. Dean, the paranoid at the helm, brought the boat around neatly to a small wooden dock. Everybody got out, Di Presso heading nervously for an outside staircase. I want to check on my car. Edipa and Metzger, carrying picnic stuff, followed up the stairs, along a balcony, out of the building's shadow, up a metal ladder finally to the roof. It was like walking on the head of a drum. They could hear the reverberations inside the hollow building beneath, and the delighted yelling of the paranoids. Di Presso, scuba suit glistening, scrambled up the side of a cupola. Edipa spread a blanket and poured booze into cups made of white, crushed, plastic foam. It's still there, I ought to make a run for it.
Who's your client? Asked Metzger, holding out a tequila sour.
Fella who's chasing me, allowed Di Presso, holding the cup between his teeth so it covered his nose and looking at them. Arch.
You ran from clients? You flee ambulances?
He's been trying to borrow money, since I told him I couldn't get an advance against any settlement in this suit.
you're all ready to lose, then
My heart isn't in it, and if I can't even keep up payments on that XKE I bought while temporarily insane, how can I lend money?
Over 30 years? Metzger snorted. That's temporary.
I'm not so crazy I don't know trouble, and Tony J is in it, friends. Gambling mostly, also Talkie's been up to show cause to the local table why he shouldn't be in for some discipline there. That kind of grief I do not need.
you're a selfish schmuck.
All the time Cosa Nostra is watching. It does not need to be seen helping those the organization does not want helped.
I have relatives in Sicily.
Paranoids and rejects appeared against the bright sky, from behind turrets, gables, ventilating ducts, and moved in on the eggplant sandwiches in the basket. Metzger sat on the jug of booze, so they couldn't get any. The winter prison.
Tell me about the lawsuit.
You've been into Variety books. You know the Beaconsfield filter thing.
Oh, Charco.
Yeah, well Tony Jaguar, my client, supplied some bones, he alleges. And Variety never paid him. That's what it's about.
Offhand, it doesn't sound like in Variety. He was scrupulous about payments like that. Unless it was a bribe. I only did his legal tax deductions, so I wouldn't have seen it if it was. What construction firm did your client work for?
Construction firm?
The paranoids and their chicks may have been out of earshot.
Human bones, right?
Yes.
All right, that's how he got them. Different highway outfits in the area, ones in Variety had bought into, they got the contracts. All drawn up in most kosher fashion. Manfred. If there was payola in there, I doubt it got written down.
How are road builders in any position to sell bones, pray?
Old cemeteries have to be ripped up, like in the path of the East San Narciso Freeway. It had no right to be there, so we just barreled on through, no sweat.
No bribes, no freeways. These bones came from Italy. A straight sale. Some of them, waving out at the lake, are down there, to decorate the bottom for the scuba nuts. That's what I've been doing today, examining the goods in dispute. Till Tony started chasing, anyway. The rest of the bones were used in the R&D phase of the filter program, back around the early single-quote 50s, way before cancer. Tony Jaguar says he harvested them all from the bottom of Lago di Pita.
My God. GIs?
About a company. Lago di Pita was near the Tyrrhenian coast, somewhere between Naples and Rome, and had been the scene of a now ignored in 1943 tragic battle of attrition in a minor pocket developed during the advance on Rome.
For weeks, a handful of American troops, cut off and without communications, huddled on the narrow shore of the clear and tranquil lake while from the cliffs that tilted vertiginously over the beach Germans hit them day and night with plunging and fighting fire. The water of the lake was too cold to swim, you died of exposure before you could reach any safe shore. There were no trees to build rafts with. No planes came over except an occasional Stuka with strafing in mind. It was remarkable that so few men held out so long. They dug in as far as the rocky beach would let them. They sent small raids up the cliffs that mostly never came back, but did succeed in taking out a machine gun, once. Patrols looked for routes out, but those few that returned had found nothing. They did what they could to break out. Failing, they clung to life as long as they could. But they died, everyone, dumbly, without a trace or a word. One day the Germans came down from the cliffs, and their enlisted men put all the bodies that were on the beach into the lake, along with what weapons and other material were no longer of use to either side.
Presently the bodies sank, and stayed where they were till the early 50s when Tony Jaguar, who'd been a corporal in an Italian outfit attached to the German force at Lago di Pita and knew about what was at the bottom, decided along with some colleagues to see what he could salvage. All they managed to come up with was bones. Out of some murky train of reasoning, which may have included the observed fact that American tourists, beginning then to be plentiful, would pay good dollars for almost anything. and stories about Forest Lawn and the American cult of the dead. Possibly some dim hope that Senator McCarthy, and others of his persuasion, in those days having achieved a certain ascendancy over the rich cretini from across the sea, would somehow refocus attention on the fallen of WW2, especially ones whose corpses had never been found. Out of some such labyrinth of assumed motives, Tony Jaguar decided he could surely unload his harvest of bones on some American someplace, through his contacts in the family, known these days as Cosa Nostra.
He was right. An import-export firm bought the bones, sold them to a fertilizer enterprise, which may have used one or two femurs for laboratory tests, but eventually decided to phase entirely into Manhattan instead and transferred the remaining several tons to a holding company, which stored them in a warehouse outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana, for maybe a year before Beaconsfield got interested. So it was Beaconsfield bought them. Not Inverarily. The only shares he held were in Osteolysis, Incorporated, the company they set up to develop the filter. Never in Beaconsfield itself.
You know, blokes. This all has a most bizarre resemblance to that ill Jacobean revenge play we went to last week,
remarked one of the girls, a long-waisted, brown-haired lovely in a black knit leotard and pointed sneakers.
The curious tragedy, she's right. The same kind of kinky thing, you know. Bones of lost battalion in lake, fished up, turned into charcoal.
They've been listening, those kids. All the time, somebody listens-ing, snoops. They bug your apartment, they tap your phone.
But we don't repeat what we hear, none of us smoke Beaconsfields anyway. We're all on pot, laughter. But no joke, for Leonard the drummer now reached into the pocket of his beach robe and produced a fistful of marijuana cigarettes and distributed them among his chums. Metzger closed his eyes, turned his head, muttering, "Possession."
Help,
said Dipresso, looking back with a wild eye and open mouth across the lake. Another runabout had appeared and was headed toward them. Two figures in gray suits crouched behind its windshield.
Metz, I'm running for it. If he stops by here, don't bully him, he's my client.
And he disappeared down the ladder. Edipa with the Cyclops on her back and stared through the wind at the empty blue sky. Soon she heard the Godzilla 2 starting up. Metzger, he's taking the boat? Were marooned. So they were, until well after the sun had set in Miles, Dean, Serge and Leonard and their chicks, by holding up the glowing roaches of their cigarettes like a flipkart section at a football game to spell out alternate S's and O's, attracted the attention of the Fungoso Lagoon Security Force, a garrison against the night made up of one-time cowboy actors and LA motorcycle cops.
The time in between had been whiled away with songs by the Paranoids, and juicing, and feeding pieces of eggplant sandwich to a flock of not-too-bright seagulls who had mistaken Fungoso Lagoons for the Pacific, and hearing the plot of The Courier's Tragedy, by Richard Warfinger, related near to unintelligible by 8 memories on looping progressively into regions as strange to map as their rising coils and clouds of pot smoke.
So confusing that next day Edipa decided to go see the play itself, and even conned Metzger into taking her.
The Courier's Tragedy is being put on by a San Narciso group known as the Tank Players, the Tank being a small arena theater located out between the traffic analysis firm and a Wildcat transistor outfit that hadn't been there last year and wouldn't be this coming, but meanwhile was underselling even the Japanese and hauling in loot by the steam shovelful.
A reluctant Metzger and I come in and only a partly filled house. Attendance did not swell by the time the play started. But the costumes were gorgeous and the lighting imaginative, and though the words were all spoken in transplanted Middle Western stage British.
Edipa found herself after 5 minutes sucked utterly into the landscape of evil Richard Warfinger had fashioned for his 17th century audiences, so pre-apocalyptic, death-wishful, sensually fatigued, and prepared, a little poignantly, for that abyss of civil war that had been waiting, cold and deep, only a few years ahead of them.
Angelo, then evil Duke of Squamuglia, had perhaps 10 years before this play's opening, murdered my father, the good Duke of adjoining Fagio, by poisoning the feet on an image of Saint Narcissus, Bishop of Jerusalem, in the court chapel, which feat the Duke was in the habit of kissing every Sunday at Mass.
But that murder enabled the evil illegitimate son, Pasquale, to take over as regent for you, his half-brother Niccolo, the rightful heir and good guy of the play, till he comes of age. Pasquale, of course, had no intention of letting him live so long.
Being in thick with the Duke of Squamuglia, Pasquale plotted to do away with me when we were younger by suggesting a game of hide and seek and then finessing me into crawling inside of an enormous cannon, which a henchman was then to set off, hoping to blow me up, as Pasquale will recall ruefully, later on in the third act. Out in the bloody rain to feed our films amid the Maenad Lord Nitus song and Sulphur's Cantus Firmus.
Ruefully, because the henchman, a likable schemer named Del Cole, is secretly involved with dissident elements in the court of Fagio who wanted to keep you alive, and so they contrived to stuff a young goat into the cannon instead, meanwhile smuggling you out of the ducal palace disguised as an elderly procuress.
What I'm trying to do, ostensibly, is develop a new market, since the evil Duke of Squamuglia has steadfastly refused, even with the lower rates and faster service of the Thurning taxes system, to employ any but his own messengers in communicating with his stooge Pasquale over in neighbouring Fagio. The real reason I am waiting around is of course to get a crack at the Duke. I confided my history to you, my friend, Domenico. I'm at this point grown up, hanging around the court of my father's murderer, Duke Angelo, and masquerading as a special courier of the Thurning taxes family, who at this time hold a postal monopoly throughout most of the Holy Roman Empire.
Evil Duke Angelo, meanwhile, is scheming to amalgamate the duchies of Squamuglia and Fagio, by marrying off the only royal female available, his sister Francesca, to Pasquale, the Fagian usurper. The only obstacle in the way of this union is that Francesca is Pasquale's mother, her illicit liaison with the good ex-Duke of Fagio being one reason Angelo had him poisoned to begin with. There was an amusing scene where Francesca delicately seeks to remind her brother of the social taboos against incest. They seem to have slipped her mind, replies Angelo, during the 10 years he and Francesca had been having their affair.
Incest or no, the marriage must be. It is vital to my long-range political plans.
The church will never sanction it.
So, I will bribe a cardinal.
He began feeling me up and nibbling at my neck.
The dialogue modulates into the fevered figures of intemporal desire, and the scene ends with the couple collapsing onto a divan. The act itself closes with Domenico, to whom the naive Niccolo started it off by spilling his secret, trying to get him to see Duke Angelo and betray his dear friend.
The Duke, of course, is in his apartment busy knocking off a piece, and the best I can do is an administrative assistant who turns out to be the same Ercole, who once saved the life of young Niccolo and aided his escape from Fagio. This he presently confesses to me, though only after having untying me to foolishly bend over and putting my head into a curious black box, on the pretext of showing me a pornographic diorama. Hostile eyes promptly clamps onto my faithless head and the box muffles my cries for help.
I, Ercole, binded his hands and feet with scarlet silk cords, let him know who it is he's run afoul of, reached into the box with a pair of pincers, tore out Domenico's tongue, stabbed him a couple times, poured into the box a beaker of aquariga, and enumerated a list of other goodies, including castration, that Domenico will undergo before he's allowed to die, all amid screams, Tungulus attempts to pray, agonized struggles from the victim. With the tongue impaled on my rapier, I ran to a burning torch set in the wall, set the tongue aflame and waving it around like a madman conclude the act by screaming, "Thy pitiless unmanning is most meet, think Sir Coley, the zany Paraclete."
Descended this malign, unholy ghost, let us begin thy frightful Pentecost.
The lights went out, and in the quiet somebody across the arena from Edinburgh distinctly said, "Ick."
You want to go?
I want to see about the bones. She had to wait till the fourth act. The second was largely spent in the protracted torture and eventual murder of a prince of the church who prefers martyrdom to sanctioning Francesca's marriage to her son.
The only interruptions come when Ercole, spying on the cardinal's agony, dispatches couriers to the good guy element back in Faccio, who have it in for Pasquale, telling them to spread the word that Pasquale is planning to marry his mother, calculating this ought to rile up public opinion some. And another scene in which Niccolo, passing the time of day with one of Duke Angelo's couriers, hears the tale of the lost card, a body of some 50 hand-picked knights, the flower of Pynchon youth, who once rode as protection for the good Duke.
One day, out on maneuvers near the frontiers of Squamaglia, they all vanished without a trace, and shortly afterward the good Duke got poisoned. Honest Niccolo, who always has difficulty hiding his feelings, observes that if the two events turn out to be at all connected, and can be traced to Duke Angelo.
Boy, the Duke better watch out, is all.
The other courier, one Vittorio, takes offense, vowing in an aside to
report this treasonable talk to Angelo at the first opportunity.
Meanwhile, back in the torture room, the cardinal is now being forced to bleed into a chalice and consecrate his own blood, not to God, but to Satan.
Oh. I also cut off his big toe, and he is made to hold it up like a host and say,
"This is my body."
The kin-witted Angelo, observing that it's the first time he's told anything like the truth in 50 years of systematic lying. Altogether, a most anti-clerical scene, perhaps intended as a sop to the Puritans of the time, a useless gesture since none of them ever went to place, regarding them for some reason as immoral.
The third act takes place in the court of Faccio, and is spent murdering Pasquale, as the culmination of a coup stirred up by Ercole's agents. While the battle rages in the streets outside the palace, Pasquale is locked up in his patrician hothouse, holding an orgy.
Present for my merrymaking is a fierce black performing ape, brought back from a recent voyage to the Indies.
There was an intermission. Metzler lurched into the undersized lobby to smoke, and headed for the ladies' room. She looked idly around for the symbol she'd seen the other night in the scope, but all the walls, surprisingly, were blank. She could not say why, exactly, but felt threatened by this absence of even the marginal triad communication that Tureens are known for.
The courier's tragedy now discloses evil Duke Angelo in a state of nervous frenzy.
I have learned about the coup in Faccio, the possibility that Niccolo may be alive somewhere after all.
Word has reached him that Gennaro is levying a force to invade Squamaglia, also a rumor that the Pope is about to intervene because of the Cardinal's murder. Surrounded by treachery on all sides, the Duke has Ercole, whose true role he still does not suspect, finally summoned the firm and tax his courier, figuring he can no longer trust his own men. Ercole brings in Niccolo to await the Duke's pleasure. Angelo takes out a quill, parchment and ink, explaining to the audience but not to the good guys, who are still ignorant of recent developments, that
to forestall an invasion from Faccio, I must assure General Nero with all haste of my good intentions.
As he scribbles, he lets drop a few disordered and cryptic remarks about the ink he's using, implying it's a very special fluid indeed. Like,
this pitcher brew in France is anchor, height, in this might dire Squamaglia, ape the Gaul, for anchor it has risen, from deeps untold. And the swan has yielded but one hollow quill, the hapless mutton, but its tegument. Yet what, transmuted, sword in silken house, between, was neither plucked nor harshly flayed, but gathered up, from wildly different beasts. All of which causes me high amusement.
The message that Gennaro completed and sealed, Niccolo tucks it in his doublet and takes off for Faccio, still unaware, as am I, of the Queen's own impending restoration as rightful Duke of Fagio.
Scene switches to Gennaro, at the head of a small army, en route to invade Squamaglia.
There is a lot of talk to the effect that if Angelo and Space had better send a messenger to let us know before we reach the frontier. Otherwise, with great reluctance, we will, and he says to him.
Back to Squamaglia, where Vittorio, the Duke's courier, reports how Niccolo has been talking treason. Somebody else runs in with news that the body of Domenico, Niccolo's faithless friend, has been found mutilated. But tucked in his shoe was a message, somehow scrawled in blood, revealing Niccolo's true identity.
Angelo flew into an apoplectic rage and orders Niccolo's pursuit and destruction. But not by his own men. It is at about this point in the play, in fact, that things really get peculiar, and a gentle chill, and ambiguity, begins to creep in among the words.
Heretofore the naming of names has gone on either literally or as metaphor. But now, as I give my fatal command, a new mode of expression takes over. It can only be called a kind of ritual reluctance. Certain things, I have made clear, will not be spoken aloud. Certain events will not be shown on stage, though it is difficult to imagine, given the excesses of the preceding acts, what these things could possibly be. I will not, perhaps may not, enlighten you.
Screaming at me. He is explicit enough about who shall not pursue Niccolo. His own bodyguard he describes to their faces as zanies, poltroons. But who then will the pursuers be? I know.
Every flunky in the court, idling around in their Squamaglia livery and exchanging significant looks, knows. It is all a big joke. The audiences of the time knew. I know, but do not say. As close as I come, does not illuminate. Let him that visored keep into his grave, that vain usurping of an honored name. We'll dance his mask as if it were the truth, and list the penured swift of those who, sworn to punctual vendetta never sleep, lest at the palest whisper of the name sweet Niccolo hath stolen, one tries be lost in bringing down a felon's soulless doom unutterable.
Back to Gennaro. A spy arrives from Squamaglia to tell them.
Niccolo's on his way.
Great rejoicing, in the midst of which Gennaro, who seldom converses, only orates, begs everybody remember that Niccolo is still riding under the fern and tucks his colours. The cheering stops. Again, as in Angelo's court, the curious chill creeps in. Everyone on stage, having clearly been directed to do so, becomes aware of the possibility.
I, Gennaro, even less enlightened than Angelo was, en boca de protection of God and Saint Narcissus por Niccolo, and we all will ride on. I ask the lieutenant, ¿dónde estén? Turns out, it's Orle, Ale Gorson, from the lake. Where Fageos lost, guard, where last seen before their mysterious disappearance.
Meanwhile, at Angelo's palace, though widely, my string has run out at last. Accosted by Vittorio and half a dozen others, I am charged with the murder of Domenico. Witnesses parade in, there is the travesty of a trial, and I meet my end in a refreshingly simple mass stabbing.
We also see Niccolo in the scene following for the last time. He has stopped to rest by the shore of a lake where he remembers being told the Fagian guard disappeared. He sits under a tree, opens Angelo's letter, and learns at last of the coup and the death of Pasquale A.
I realize that I'm riding toward restoration, the love of an entire dukedom, the coming true of all my most virtuous hopes. Leaning against the tree, I read parts of the letter aloud, commenting, sarcastic, on what is blatantly a pack of lies devised to soothe Gennaro until Angelo can muster his own army of Squamaglians to invade Fagio. Off stage there is a sound of footpads. I leap to my feet, staring up one of the radial aisles, hand frozen on the hilt of my sword. I tremble and cannot speak, only stutter, in what may be the shortest line ever written in blank verse, T.
As if breaking out of some dream's paralysis, he begins, each step an effort to retreat. Suddenly, in live and terrible silence, with dancer's grace, 3 figures, long-limbed, effeminate, dressed in black tights, leotards and gloves, black silk hose pulled over their faces, come capering on stage and stop, gazing at him. Their faces behind the stockings are shadowy and deformed. They wait. The lights all go out.
Back in Squimuglia, I try to muster an army, without success.
Desperate, he assembles those flunkies and pretty girls who are left, ritually locks all his exits, has wine brought in, and begins an orgy. The act ends with Gennaro's forces drawn up by the shores of the lake. An enlisted man comes on to report that a body, identified as Niccolo by the usual amulet placed round his neck as a child, has been found in a condition too awful to talk about.
Again there is silence and everybody looks at everybody else. The soldier hands Gennaro a roll of parchment, stained with blood, which was found on the body.
From its seal we can see it's the letter from Angelo that Niccolo was carrying. Gennaro glances at it, does a double take, reads it aloud. It is no longer the line document Niccolo read as excerpts from it all, but now miraculously a long confession by Angelo of all his crimes, closing with the revelation of what really happened to the lost guard of Fagio. They were, surprise, everyone massacred by Angelo and thrown into the lake. Later on their bones were fished up again and made into charcoal, and the charcoal into ink, which Angelo, having a dark sense of humor, used in all his subsequent communications with Fagio, the present document included.
But now the bones of these immaculate have mingled with the blood of Niccolo. And innocence with innocence is joined, a wedlock whose sole child is miracle, a life's base lie, rewritten into truth. That truth it is, we all bear testament, this guard of Fagio's noble dead. In the presence of the miracle all fall to their knees, bless the name of God, Mon Niccolo, vow to lay Squimuglia waste. But Gennaro ends on a note most desperate, probably for its original audience a real shock, because it names at last the name Angelo did not and Niccolo tried to. He that we last was thumb and taxes knew now recks no lord but the stiletto's thorn, and tacit lies the gold once knotted horn. No hallowed skein of stars can ward, I trow, whose once been set is tryst with Tristero. /Tristero.
The word hung in the air as the act ended and all lights were for a moment cut. Hung in the dark to puzzle and hypnotize, but not yet to exert the power over her it was to.
The fifth act, entirely an anticlimax, is taken up by the bloodbath Gennaro visits on the court of Squimuglia. Every mode of violent death available to Renaissance man, including a light pit, land mine, a trained falcon with envenomed talons, is employed. It plays, as Metzger remarked later, like a Roadrunner cartoon in blank verse. At the end of it about the only character left alive in a stage dance with corpses is the colorless administrator, Gennaro.
According to the program, the creator's tragedy had been directed by one Randolph Riblet. He had also played the part of Gennaro the winner. Look, Metzger, come on backstage with me.
You know of them?
Said Metzger, anxious to leave. I want to find out something. I want to talk to Riblet.
Oh, about the bones.
He had a brooding look.
Fine. And what next? Picket the VA? March on Washington? God protect me.
I don't know. It just has me uneasy. The two things, so close. He adjusts the ceiling of the little theater, causing a few heads among those leaving to swivel.
From these lib, overeducated broads with the soft heads and bleeding hearts. I am 35 years old, and I should know better. Harrigan Comics, which he is hardly old enough to read. John Wayne on Saturday afternoon slaughtering 10,000 Japs with his teeth. This is Eric Ramaz's World War II, man. Some people today can drive VWs, carry a Sony radio in their shirt pocket. Not this one, folks. She wants to right wrongs, 20 years after it's all over. Raise ghosts. All from a drunken hassle with Manny Di-Presso.
Metzger, I'm a young Republican, forgetting her first loyalty, legal and moral, is to the estate she represents.
Not to our boys in uniform, however gallant, whenever they died.
It isn't that. I don't care what Beaconsfield uses in its filter. I don't care what Pierce spot from the Cosa Nostra. I don't want to think about them. Or about what happened at Lago di Pisa, or cancer. She looked around for words, feeling helpless.
What then? What?
I don't know, Metzger, don't harass me. Be on my side.
Against whom?
Inquired Metzger, putting on shades. I want to see if there's a connection. I'm curious.
Yes, you're curious. I'll wait in the car, okay?
Oedipa watched him out of sight, then went looking for dressing rooms. Circled the annular corridor outside twice before settling on a door in the shadowy interval between two overhead lights. I walked in on soft, elegant chaos, an impression of emanations, mutually interfering, from the stub and dens of everybody's exposed nerve endings. A girl removing fake blood from her face motioned Oedipa into a region of brightly lit mirrors. She pushed in, gliding off sweating biceps and momentary curtains of long, slim hair, till at last she stood before Driblet, still wearing his gray Gennaro outfit. It was gray.
Feel.
Extending his arm, she felt. Gennaro's costume was gray flannel.
You sweat like hell, but nothing else would really be him, right?
Oedipa nodded. She couldn't stop watching his eyes. They were bright black, surrounded by an incredible network of lines, like a laboratory maze for studying intelligence and tears. They seemed to know what she wanted, even if she didn't.
You came to talk about the play, let me discourage you. It was written to entertain people. Like horror movies. It isn't literature, it doesn't mean anything. Warfinger was no Shakespeare.
Who was he?
Who was Shakespeare? It was a long time ago.
Could I see a script? She didn't know what she was looking for, exactly. Driblet motioned her over to a file cabinet next to the one shower.
I'd better grab a shower. Before the drop the soap crowd get here. Scripts are in the top drawer.
But they were all purple, dittoed, worn, torn, stained with coffee. Nothing else in the drawer. Hey, where's the original? What did you make these copies from?
A paperback. Don't ask me the publisher. I found it at Zapf's used books over by the freeway. It's an anthology, Jacobean revenge plays. There was a skull on the cover.
Could I borrow it?
Somebody took it. Opening night parties. I lose at least half a dozen every time.
He stuck his head out of the shower. The rest of his body was bathed in steam, giving his head an eerie, balloon-like buoyancy. Careful, staring at her with deep amusement.
There was another copy there. Zapf might still have it. Can you find the place?
Something came to her viscera, danced briefly, and went. Are you putting me on?
Why is everybody so interested in texts?
Who else? Too quickly. Maybe he had only been talking in general. Driblet's head wagged back and forth.
Don't drag me into your scholarly disputes. Whoever you all are.
Oedipa realized then, cold corpse fingers of grew on her skin, that it was exactly the same look he tortured his cast to give each other whenever the subject of the Tristero assassins came up. The knowing look you get in your dreams from a certain unpleasant figure. she decided to ask about this look. Was it written in as a stage direction? All those people, so obviously in on something. Or was that one of your touches?
That was my own, and actually bringing the 3 assassins on stage in the 4th act. Warfinger didn't show them at all, you know.
Why did you? Had you heard about them somewhere else?
You don't understand, you guys, you're like Puritans are about the Bible. So hung up with words. You know where that play exists, not in that file cabinet, not in any paperback you're looking for, but...
A hand emerged from the veil of shower steam to indicate his suspended head.
In here. That's what I'm for. To give the spirit flesh. The words, who cares? They're rote noises to hold blind bashes with, to get past the bone barriers around an actor's memory, right? But the reality is in this head. Mine. I'm the projector at the planetarium, all the closed little universe visible in the circle of that stage is coming out of my mouth, eyes, sometimes other orifices also.
But she couldn't let it go. At the word, Driblet's face abruptly vanished, back into steam. As if switched off. Edward hadn't wanted to say the word. He had managed to create around it the same more ritual reluctance here, off stage, as he had on. What made you feel differently than Warfinger about this tristero?
If I were to resolve in here,
speculated the voice out of the drifting steam,
be washed down the drain into the Pacific, what you saw tonight would vanish too. You, that part of you so concerned, God knows how, with that little world, would also vanish. The only residue in fact would be things Warfinger didn't lie about. Perhaps Squamuglia and Fagio, if they ever existed. Perhaps the Thermal Taxis mail system. Stamp collectors tell me it could exist. Perhaps the other, also. The adversary. But they would be traces, fossils. Dead, mineral, without value or potential. You could fall in love with me. You can talk to my spring. You can hide a tape recorder in my bedroom. See what I talk about from wherever I am when I sleep. You want to do that? You can put together clues, develop a thesis, or several, about why characters reacted to the Tristero possibility the way they did, why the assassins came on, why the black costumes. You could waste your life that way and never touch the truth. Warfinger supplied words and a yarn. I gave them life. That's it.
He fell silent. The shower splashed. Driblet.
You could do that?
His eyes waited, at the centers of their webs. I'll call. She left, and was all the way outside before thinking. I went from there to ask about Bones, and instead we talked about the tristero thing. She stood in a nearly deserted parking lot, watching the headlights of Metzger's car come at her, and wondered how accidental it had been. Metzger had been listening to the car radio. She got in and rode with him for 2 miles before realizing that the whimsies of nighttime reception were bringing them cuffed down from Kinneret, and that the disc jockey talking was her husband, Macho,